Morning, everyone. So I think there we go. So yesterday, Rishi Sunak carried out one of his what he calls PM Connect events, where he pretends to go and talk to the public, but they're always very carefully stage managed, so there's very little actual talking to the public. He talks at the public. There were a couple of questions yesterday which he completely dodged, refusing, for example, to give his endorsement to the Conservative candidate for Wellingborough, the by-election coming up. But there were a few other things as well. Like the Labour attack lines coming in. Okay, election year, you expect that. And there's no surprise. I've said this for years on my own channel, because this is what happens in every election. Every election where the Conservatives are in power, the line, doesn't matter who the leader is, the line is always the same. We've got these things in place. Yes, you can't see the benefits now. Yes, we've been in power for 14 years because it takes a long time, but the benefits are just mere months away. If you vote for us next year, it'll all be the land of milk and honey. It'll all be fantastic. But if you let Labour in, they will wreck it overnight. It'll all be gone, completely gone. That's it. You'll get nothing. So yesterday, Rishi Sunak tried the same line, only the way he put it was a little bit weird, because he said, if you vote for Labour, we'll go back to square one. Now, well, first of all, let's look at what square one is. Now, the graphic we'll use in a minute, but first of all, I'm sure people are familiar with a different one, which I'm not going to put up, but you can easily look it up. So if you think about all the things that Labour did in power, remember Gordon Brown's party conference, where he reeled off a load of things. And there's a famous graphic that has been produced years ago that lists all the things that Labour actually produced, represents the state, stage one, including like the minimum wage, things like that. But there is another one that has been tweeted by someone called Toby Frenson, but it's based on, people may know Russ in Cheshire. He's not so active on Twitter these days because it's a toxic cesspool. But he produced a load of things which basically represent step one, which Graham may want to flash up now. I'll try and put a link in the description below later. But in terms of what step one was, we have, for example, there's different categories, 8 categories, which have been thoughtfully presented here. On health, what did Labour do? 85,000 more nurses. The Conservatives keep saying, "Oh, we're going to bring in we've recruited 40,000 new nurses." They promised to recruit 40,000 new nurses in 2019. They say they've done that now, and it's like, yeah, but when you say that, and when the nursing shortage is just over 40,000, people think what you mean is you're going to tackle the nursing shortage, so we don't have a shortage of nurses. And it's like in 2019, we had a nursing shortage I can't remember exact figures. I'll have to look them up near the election, round about 40,000. And at the moment, it's still round about 40,000. And you think, well, what's happened here then? Oh, but we've recruited 40,000 new nurses. Yeah. Do you think the problem might be that another 40,000 nurses have basically left the profession? Because some naturally retire. So some of that recruitment is just to cover retirements anyway. You recruit all the time to cover people leaving the profession for retirement or to leave or going, doing something else. But there's been, record numbers of people leaving the profession recently. So all this recruitment is basically just like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Whereas Labour actually increased the number of nurses overall. NHS waiting times down 82%. I mean, that's straightforward. That's a really easy one. Step one, if we went back to square one, as Rishi Sunak says, that means low waiting list. That means that nobody, well, what was it? Oh, it was well over 90% of people had no more than a 4-hour wait in A&E. It meant that almost nobody had more than a 1-year wait for surgery, and even that was at the upper end of it. It's absolutely insane. On healthcare, so easy. I mean, other things that are mentioned in here. In fact, it's got it up here. 98% of A&E patients seen in 4 hours. I have been to A&E a few times in the last couple of years, either for myself in one case or for other people, right? I've accompanied or been a patient for in A&E at least 3 times that I can think of in the last couple of years. And on none of those occasions in fact, no, 4 times. Sorry, 4. I've remembered a 4th. On none of those occasions were we in and out within 4 hours. So I would argue at the moment, I'm not going to say it's 100% people take over 4 hours, but it's obviously common, because I didn't even just go on like Friday or Saturday evenings or anything. Free over eye test for over 60s, heart disease deaths down 150,000, cancer deaths down, free breast screening, inpatient waiting list down, the created NHS director. I mean, that's a mechanism. I don't focus on that. I focus on outcomes. So just on healthcare, square one would be brilliant. It means, because there's things not in there. Remember the other things. You could get a GP appointment guaranteed within 48 hours. That's not even mentioned on there. There's too much to put on the graphic. Imagine that these days. I have sometimes tried to get a GP appointment and been told, sorry, you can't. It's like, what do you mean I can't? Well, it only goes 6 weeks in advance. There are some GPs, like the one local to me, but it's not my GP. I need to change to it, actually. They do a different thing. They don't let you make appointments. They basically give out some appointments so that they can get you an appointment on the day. What they do is it's first come, first serve. So sometimes, but again, it's the same thing. You might not be able to get an appointment at all. If you're in the queue and they've got 20 appointments and you're number 21 in the queue, you're not getting an appointment. And they bring them out morning and afternoon. So in the afternoon, they release another load. So if you can phone in and get in, you can get an appointment. If not, tough luck, try again tomorrow. So no matter how GPs try to manage it, there is no guaranteed way to get an appointment these days. Whereas you were guaranteed within 48 hours, absolute guarantee. There's so many things. But someone's mentioning there, the Question Time episode, 2005. I don't remember when it was, but I do remember the episode where the audience was going mental at Tony Blair because they couldn't pick their appointment time. Well, no, it was beyond 48 hours. You say, what spoiled brats? No, they did have a good reason, and Tony Blair said they had a good reason. So what happened then? There was a Question Time. For those who don't know, Tony Blair was getting shit from people saying, because of this 48-hour guarantee, if we want to make an appointment for, say, 4 days or 5 days in future, they're not letting us do that because they're saying to meet their targets, it has to be within 48 hours. And he did concede that was not the intention. The intention was that if you wanted the appointment within 48 hours, but you can see how it works. The government set these targets, and then GPs, in order to meet they didn't want to give someone an appointment in 5 days' time because, well, that's not helping us meet our target, is it? So I don't know whether they dealt with that. I do remember the episode though. So yeah, he was actually getting grief because they were being told, no, you've got to have your appointment in 48 hours. Luxury. This is like the old 4 Yorkshiremen thing, isn't it? These days you look at that and you go, that's luxury. Then on poverty, that's just healthcare. Poverty. 600,000 children lifted out of poverty. We've now got more children in poverty. But again, the focus is always on children because, like, it applies to anyone. Anyone in poverty is wrong. But the reason the focus is politically always on children is because what do the Tories instantly say if you talk about someone trapped in poverty? Oh, they're lazy. They're not applying themselves properly. But you can't do that with children because you say, hang on a minute, you can't blame children. If children are in poverty, you can't say they're not applying themselves. I know Jacob Rees-Mogg wants them back down the mines or up the chimneys, but that's not actually happening. So that's an important metric, number of children in or out of poverty. The government claim that there are fewer people in absolute poverty these days, but they define that. But relative poverty matters as well. At the end of the day, can you afford a basic standard of living? If not, you're poor. That's all there is to it. If as the saying goes, if the money runs out before the month runs out, then you're poor, right? And the Tories will claim, oh, because that's because you're spending it on Netflix and these foreign holidays. It's like, no, it's not. It's because they're poor. Because and again, if you have someone who's working full time and they need benefits, it's because work doesn't pay. They keep saying, back from David Cameron, we need to make work pay. We need to make work pay. Labour should push this more. I would say after 14 years, why haven't you then? Because work doesn't pay. Because if you can work full time and still need in-work benefits, you're basically saying that that work doesn't pay. Why doesn't it pay? Maybe the reason Labour wouldn't do that is because they can't guarantee that they would be able to get rid of these in-work benefits either in the short term. 1 million pensioners lifted out of poverty. I wonder what the figures on that are now. Generally speaking, the Tories do at least try and look after pensioners to a certain extent, in terms of pensions at least, and other benefits. Not so much I mean, they'll still happily destroy the health and social care services. 26% increase in child benefit, introduce winter fuel payments. Improvements to social homes. I mean, part of this will also be the insulation. At the moment, people talking about the cost of heating, cost of energy, the government talking about making us energy secure. Well, part of making yourself genuinely energy secure is not needing to use as much energy where possible. Heating is a classic case of where we could use less energy. So Labour at the time, when they left office, had for several years been on a program of insulating homes. So they would need less energy in winter. And the Conservatives instantly binned that. Oh, that was gone immediately. Absolutely immediately. Fell off a cliff, the number of homes being insulated. So Labour want to get that back up again. Again, the Conservatives won't do that. That would be a useful use of public money, because then there's a lower reliance on gas. Free bus travel for the over 60s as well, which we had that terrible story a couple of years ago, if you remember, of one pensioner saying she was using her free bus pass to just ride the buses all day because it was warm. Her home was not warm. And Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister at the time, thought this was brilliant. Oh, I introduced that, he said, which he didn't, Labour did. I introduced that. And it's as if it was a good thing. Oh, it's a good thing, isn't it, that she can ride the bus all day? I did that. And it's like, well, no, you didn't. And also, it's not a good thing. The reason she's doing it is because her home is cold. Why don't you do something about that? Peter saying their pensioners get zero benefit from national insurance cuts, but in April their income tax will go up. Possibly, it depends on the pensioner. But do bear in mind, the state pension is going up at the proper inflation level. So, pension, like in terms of the pensioners, the Tories are targeting, it's largely ones who own their own homes outright. So they're generally going to be all right, or at least better than they were last year. I mean, it's a relative term, isn't it? But the Conservatives are aware that they cannot rely just on pensioners. See, at the moment, when you look at their attitude towards, say, interest rates, for a lot of their core support, they don't mind high interest rates because they have savings. They don't have debts and they do have savings. So high interest rates for those people are actually all right. They're decent. Because think about it. I mean, those are the pensioners they're particularly targeting. The poorer pensioners, the pensioners who are going to be worse off, they don't target those with financial inducements. They target those with fear. Oh, you can't let Labour in because they'll just let the criminals run riot. So they target them with fear, but they target more affluent pensioners with financial inducements. But they know that there's working people that they need votes from as well. So they are having to do something. That's why you've even got in Tory media that, like on Conservative Home, the website for the Conservative Party or party members. It's not run by the Conservatives. It was they're talking about the fact that the government need to stop with this inheritance tax nonsense, and they need to actually do something with income tax, because they recognise, they've not got their head up their own arse. They recognise that actually what they need to do is help people, ordinary people, because they know full well this inheritance tax is a fiddle. Anyway, let's carry on with where square one was. Employment. So the minimum wage, we had that. Created new jobs as opposed to them being lost. Cut long-term unemployment by 75%, double the. So the Conservatives constantly talk about Labour will start with more unemployment than when they started with, and it's like they do the usual thing there. So they're ignoring inflation, except in this case, it's inflation of the population. So the actual rate of unemployment was lower. Now, granted, I don't ever make too much of that, because who defines what unemployment is? The government. And the way unemployment is measured now is not the same as it was measured in 2010, for example. Introduced the right to 24 days holiday, introduced 2 weeks paternity leave. So, you know, we had advances in sharing out parental responsibilities. Education, doubled education funding for every pupil. That has gone down now. Education funding per pupil has massively dropped. 36,000 additional teachers. Where are we now? The Department for Education is so strapped for teachers that it's now having to work out how it can get more immigrants to do the job. Not actually kidding. The government, with its anti-immigration rhetoric, is now trying to work out how to get more teachers from abroad, because we cannot get enough teachers in this country. Teaching assistants, again, that's been lost. I mean, you know, one of the first things to go when the budgets were being squeezed was teaching assistants under the Tories. And now they're having to get rid of teachers. Sure Start centres, which, of course, Angela Rayner raves about. Record literacy and numeracy. Again, the Conservatives claim the outcomes, international league tables, are looking better now than they were then. They're not. The scores were higher when Labour were in power. There's actually one score that's the same, that's just stayed the same, so it hasn't improved. And the rest of them were higher under Labour. Free nursery places, free fruit for 4 to 6-year-olds. You know, so the Conservatives, first of all, took the milk away from the children, and then they took the fruit away. Admiral Awesome, thank you. £5 super chat says, aliens from a different universe are going to try and stop the next election. No, they're not. Do you know, we're only halfway through. We've got 10 minutes left to go. And this is all, I'll catch up with some comments actually. This is all step one, all of these things. Craig said, the issue with inheritance tax is the rich don't pay it, only the middle class who have enough to hit the threshold, but not enough to make dodging it worthwhile. True, but at the same time, you're talking about £1 million house. So I've noticed. I had someone try and comment, say, oh, people, they do this thing, they struggle, they go without holidays, they sometimes go without food, just so their children can inherit this thing without paying tax. It's like, well, first of all, mate, that's not what's happening. If someone's buying a house, they're buying it for themselves. Yes, they may think, oh, my children may get this house at some point in the future. That's not why they're buying the house. They're buying the house to have somewhere to live in, right? And if they're buying a nice house, it's to have somewhere nice to live in. That is the reason people buy a house. Second of all, if your kids are going to inherit it, they're still going to inherit it. Even if they have to pay tax on it, they're still getting money which they haven't earned. Inheritance tax is tax on income you haven't earned. And then the third thing to mention is that house is going to be worth £1 million if there's to be any inheritance tax paid on it at all. People who've got £1 million house have not been doing without food unless they've been on a diet. That's what you're talking about. If you're saying they've gone without food, what you mean is they've gone on a diet. But anyway, I was 18 when the trade Tories came to power. I was so naive back then. I had no idea they could be so truly evil. They made every issue 1 million times worse to deal with. There is a sense in which I didn't expect them to be quite as bad as they were. I had grown up under Thatcher and Major. And my view of the Conservatives in 2010 was that they don't understand. I didn't see them as evil. I knew some were evil. Of course, there's some evil people everywhere in politics. But I thought ultimately they just didn't understand, because there's an excessive proportion of them who've had it easy in life. Many of them were born into wealth or privilege and went to private schools. I mean, Rishi Sunak, right? Rishi Sunak's parents are, as far as the Conservatives are concerned, they were scrimpers and savers. They were people who suffered privations to send their little Rishi to private school, right? His dad was a doctor. It was the reason, like, as far as the Conservatives are concerned, Rishi Sunak's parents were poor. They were poor because they didn't own acres of land or something. Because it was it actually required some careful budgeting to send him to a top private school because he's a doctor. So far they're concerned, a doctor's a peasant. He's like no different to a pig farmer. So, or the farm hand on a pig farm. So, that's the difference. That's how I saw Conservatives. They just don't understand. They've never had to worry about the money running out before the end of the month. They've never had to, when something's broken on the car, it needs fixing, and they go, oh, God, I don't know where to get the money from. It's like, no, if it's broken, is it worth it? They'll just get a new car. These people don't understand. They've had it easy. They think because they've worked hard that their rewards they've gained in life are a result of that hard work. They don't realize that, yes, they may have worked hard, and some may not have done, but they may have worked hard, but they also had that privilege. You don't see your own privilege unless it's pointed out to you and you're willing to see it, right? That's how I saw the Conservatives, as ultimately well-meaning, but don't understand. Whereas, this wasn't recent, this is from David Cameron onwards, they were absolutely vile, deliberately evil. David Cameron will have been told before 2015 that his austerity policies were killing people. He will have been told that, and he proceeded anyway. And the efforts they made, like, for example, with the NHS. So Major and Thatcher tried to penny pinch with the NHS, but they didn't try to destroy it. David Cameron did. David Cameron deliberately made the NHS less efficient. He broke it up and made it less efficient. He didn't just try to improve efficiency to save costs. That would be a normal Conservative attitude. I would get that. He didn't do that. He literally tried to make it less efficient and cut the funding. But there we go. Careful, Phil. I'm related to some very rich pig farmers. The farm hands on the pig. I did on the pig farm. I corrected myself. Have I read James O'Brien's latest book, Phil? No, I haven't. Actually, informative, balanced, and clear, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't read a lot these days, if I'm honest, in terms of books. Nick and Diff must be a similar age to me, because my first election was 1997. Even then, I thought Thatcher Major were entitled, cruel, and pompous. How anyone votes for them and still is utterly incomprehensible. See, I didn't. I thought there was a bit of pomposity to Thatcher, and I thought they did amazing damage. But again, I thought it came from a position of ignorance. It's the Tory attitude of, if you're poor, it's because you're lazy. Which is a position of ignorance. That's not a cruel position. It's just an ignorant position. And but David Cameron onwards were very different beasts, incredibly different. And a lot of the focus is on Boris Johnson, how the Tories changed under Boris Johnson. But it was there under David Cameron as well. Like, we talk about the lies, the fact that Boris Johnson used to just lie in Parliament free from all consequences until suddenly there were consequences. But David Cameron did the same. David Cameron was always being called out by the Office for National Statistics, because it's understood, we know the old Disraeli quote, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. We know that politicians will present statistics in deliberately misleading ways, and we call it political spin, because it sort of is. Statistics is a really, to the uninitiated, it's really easy to present a statistic, and it's perfectly correct, but in a way that is misleading. But he didn't. He used to just make them up. And the Office for National Statistics would just insist, you're just making it up. So when we have these days, like we've talked about Boris Johnson just lying, and we talk about Rishi Sunak telling lies. Like, Rishi Sunak has been community noted so many times in the last week for just coming up with lies, just downright lies. And, he's even quoting a group. I can't remember the name of it now, related to the energy security thing, the North Sea oil and gas licenses. So he quoted this group as saying, even they say we're going to need this amount of oil and gas in so many years' time. And they've turned around and said, no, we didn't. We didn't come up with that figure. So he's lying by proxy as well, because he's claiming certain independent groups have said a thing when they haven't. So, but all these lies, they don't go back to Boris Johnson. They go back to David Cameron. And I don't mean the usual political lie. I don't mean in the way that all politicians lie to an extent, because at the end of the day, the public, they say they want honest politicians, but they don't. They don't want honest politicians. They want politicians that give them the easy answer. You give them a politician who says, I can solve all these problems and there's no cost to you. And a politician who says, well, I can deal with these problems, but the way I'd need to do it would also create this drawback. They will vote for the one with the easy answer. So the public don't want honesty. They don't vote for honesty. So, of course, no politician can be honest and actually be successful. It's impossible. No matter how laudable you think a particular politician is, if you know them and they're successful, they're not honest. They can't be entirely honest. They can be honest in their intentions, as in they can honestly try and do the best for you as your constituents, but they cannot actually be honest in the strict sense of the term, because people do not reward honesty in politicians. But since David Cameron, they've been off the scale. It's been malicious dishonesty. Malicious dishonesty. But anyway, the political party model is dangerous, yeah, but it's really difficult to do away with it. I mean, there's a reason why you have political parties in literally every country that's not a dictatorship, and even dictatorships that want to give the impression of democracy have a party system. Even though, like in China, it's the party, there's still a party system, because they want to have that veneer of it being for the people. But yeah, so there's lots of different systems of democracy all around the world. All of them have party systems, and it's because it's really efficient. It's a really efficient way to get people to vote for you. You say, sorry, lived in mining area during Thatcher's years. She was beyond bad and destroyed my hometown. It was the same to me. I was in a mining village in the 80s. You know, and again, I saw what she did. I saw what she got the police to do. But again, this is the way a lot of people go. They see it as, oh, it's for the greater good, for the greater good. It's a lack of empathy. I mean, you've got to remember Winston Churchill. If you talk about striking miners, Winston Churchill advocated that striking miners in Wales be shot. He said, if they're hungry, fill their bellies full of lead. I mean, this is conservatives. This is what they are. But there's a fundamental difference between those conservatives and the ones we had from 2010 who killed. I mean, the latest report out again on the number of austerity deaths. You know, there's someone who said, I've forgotten his name now, some academic researcher, but the latest is there's like 1 million people died prematurely in the last 10 years as a result of health inequality, just being poor. 1 million people, the Conservatives have killed 1 million people in the last decade to being poor. And it was like, if 1 million people died due to poverty, and you as the government were at least reducing those levels of poverty, you wouldn't blame the government. You would say, but you are actually trying, you're making headway. You inherited a problem and you're trying to fix it. But they have worsened poverty. So they take full responsibility because they're actively creating poverty. I'll leave you this with my last thought. So the tube strikes this week, which aren't going ahead. So the Conservatives were complaining about the tube strikes last week. Oh, there's going to be these tube strikes. Now there's not going to be. They've been called off because of pay talks. So now they're moaning that there's not going to be any strikes. It's like, those strikes terrible. We shouldn't have strikes. And then it's like, oh, there's no strikes anymore because we have pay talks. Pay talks? We don't want pay talks. And Boris Johnson and his chimps in the Tory party were all going, oh, this is terrible. We should have pay discipline. Now, consider that tube workers, have been offered a 5% pay increase. That's below the level of inflation. So they've been offered a real terms pay cut. Now, Transport for London may be genuine in saying that they haven't got the budget to be able to pay them properly. That may be true. But those workers are being asked to take a real terms pay cut. And so what the Conservatives are saying is that that pay discipline means paying workers less each year. That's what and that's what they've delivered as well. So we know it's what they want because it's what they've delivered in 14 years of pay discipline, like MPs, for example, or bankers. MPs, to be fair, have had real terms pay cuts as well over the 14 years, but bankers have not. In fact, bankers have had their bonuses reinstated as well. Also, CEOs, I would just look at it this way. How is a below or even an on? Let's say you were to pay public sector workers at inflation, so it never went down at inflation. How is that inflationary? It's not. Mathematically, it's not. But how is record profits and bonuses at the corporate level, how is that not inflationary? How is it not inflationary? But anyway, but there we go. But that's you know, that is what the Conservatives are. They actively want to reduce people's pay in real terms. That's what, when they talk about pay discipline, that's what they mean. Never mind Boris Johnson, oh, Brexit's going to lead to high paid jobs. Now, what happened as soon as Brexit happened? Instantly, you should accept lower pay. For the good of the country, you should accept lower pay. That's the normal Conservative line. The Conservatives don't want higher pay other than for themselves. They don't want higher salaries. They want higher incomes for what they consider wealth generators, but they don't want higher salaries for the people that actually produce. But there we go. But there we are. We'll leave it there. I didn't even get through all of square one. Sorry, but I will remember to put a link in the description below to this graphic. And as I say, there are other things as well. But just to finish off, Rishi Sunak threatening us with square one. If you get Labour, we'll get square one. Do you know what? If Labour can even get us back to square one in 10 years, I think that will be a major achievement. Because as was it John Trace in The Guardian said, that the thing about this, Labour will take us back to square one, is at the moment we're at square -4. But I'll leave you with that. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much for watching. And until next time, have a great day and I'll see you later.